Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end-of-day market recap for Monday, September 20th. And we'll start with some of the big themes or stories of the day. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations, and the whole risk disclaimer is here. And if the video is a little bit blurred, it's just because YouTube takes a little while longer to render the high definition version of the video. So yes, decent volatility today. Clearly there was a big China story, which we've kind of known about, for basically somewhere around a week, and that was really in focus last night to see where that name opened up, and of course the implications. And you heard all day about contagion today, but you just also have these things kind of seem to always come to a head, or in September there's always some type of bad news for the market. And so just kind of living up to what we normally deal with in September or October, we've got a decent dip. So I am not an expert on some of these things that, and I think that it's kind of funny to hear Twitter and so many people who, think that they know. I don't think really anybody knows the implications of this and the contagion effects, but you have a bunch of people all of a sudden comparing this to possibly Lehman Brothers. I don't think that that's really the case, but that's just an opinion, and I really don't know. So what do we do when we have, something like this that we're just not going to really know? None of us, or I would say probably 90% of you at least watching this video are not in China, so we just don't know. What we do, what we can concentrate on is what the trend in the market is telling us, what we're seeing in terms of advanced decliners, some of the market internals, market breadth, and what we're seeing in single stocks. That's just the best that we could do, and that's kind of how we deal with markets on a day-to-day basis. But so let's talk about that first. Let's go over the performance. So SPY was down 1.66%, so almost 1.75. Like I said, we had a nice move off the lows. We'll discuss that too. The Qs fared worse, down 2.2%. IWM down a little bit worse than that, about 2.4%. Microcaps were down more than that, 2.9%. The bonds were up, but I mean, it didn't seem like an extreme move for the bonds, and maybe I'm wrong there. 1.2% is a decent move, but just throughout the day, we really didn't see a major move up, like something was that wrong in the market. It's kind of just seemed like a move that we've seen quite often, right? Gold was up, silver was down, and the VIX was up big today. But again, like I said, with the bounce at the end of the day, a decent move off the highs in the VIX. So why don't we start with that? Why don't we start with the S&P? So this is kind of, we of course go through levels that are important to watch on a daily basis. I sent out this as well this weekend, just a follow through or follow on of what we were saying on Friday, which was, what I kind of realized at the end of the week last week was that we were unable to break out a value. So we tested, but we failed. And, I started to kind of look at, and I've been doing this now for a few weeks, we're just talking about what happened back in September of last year, which was more of a, someone brought this to my attention earlier today, that this was more of a move from high to low. But still, I think there's a lot of similarities here, right? We clearly moved off the highs. We had tried multiple days to break out of that September value area, just like we did a few days ago last week, and we failed to do that, and then we began to do a march lower. Now, again, this is similar, but a lot different looking, right? And if we go to where we are now, a couple days of price action, very fast, and fast to the downside. So, when I said, so one of the things that I noticed that the 80% rule was in effect. What is the 80% rule? The 80% rule is when you start a period outside of value, right? So you start the period of September, right? Because we're on the daily chart. Every one of these value areas is for the month. We broke inside value then there's an 80% chance that we go from one side of value to the other. We did that very quickly, from basically from where we were at the top of value on Thursday and close to that level on Friday, and then cut 3/4 of the way through it Friday, and then of course today we did complete the 80% rule. We also took out this VPOC too, which I thought could come into to play, but the market was very fast today for the first well, basically all day. It was a pretty above normal move. So, we've talked about that. One of the things that we said a couple weeks ago too was that, some of these things become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Everybody starts talking about, hey, we haven't had a down 5% move from the highs. Volatility is coming, and they just kind of have a way of, the more and more people talk about this, it becomes, I think anyway, in my opinion, the possibility becomes greater and greater that the more people talk about, hey, it's September and we haven't had a 5% move. All right, well, I think I'll measure to see if we had a 5% move. But what I found particularly interesting is once we got past this VPOC, now you could see that we kind of closed right around there. That's a good thing. We just don't have a lot of support around here. Once we break value and take out the VPOC, there's just not a lot of things that we really have. So it'll be interesting to see if we could stay above this. And this is what I said in the midday video, which we were down here at this point. And I'm like, hey, if we can manage to get back above and get above that version point of control, that would be a good thing. Because if not, we just really don't have a lot of support. So we'll have to see how that goes. I will tell you what I did for the day shortly. But when we start doing this to the downside, right? Half the time, a lot of times it becomes, after the fact, a good buy the dip opportunity. I just didn't know how we were going to, I think it was too hard to make that call for me in particular today, because again, if I had a support level that I really liked, or if I saw something on the tape that I really liked, we really didn't see much call buying. We saw call buying in things like Lucid, very like small in particular things. We didn't see a lot of call buying in the growth names. We saw a little bit of positioning in Google, but very, very light stuff. It just didn't seem like the appetite was there. So was there kind of this big end of day buying going on, or was it just short covering? We don't really know, and I'm not fully convinced. And I made a little bit of money off this. I was long some Q's calls, which I'll go over. But I think we just need more information before I'm ready to kind of do much to the long side here. Plus, we have a Fed meeting this week, so it's difficult. And if anybody kind of comes on Twitter or wherever and is confident, I just don't see how you could be super confident here. Let's go to the Qs for a second. The Qs, I think, let me break up NASDAQ futures. They also took out what they needed to do to the downside. Now, this looks, while breaking the 50-day moving average and breaking into value, all in one day they went through the value area. So 80% rule complete there. And I would really pay attention to this bottom of value. So in NASDAQ futures, that's 14,828. So that is a good support level. We did hold it. You can see that there's this red line in here too. So at very similar levels, there was a version point of control, and that was taken out too. So that's a really nice healthy bounce off of that. And then of course IWM, which is now below the 200-day moving average, but basically held onto the bottom of value by a thread. So this would be a good place for a bounce. I'm not going to lie here. But did I really see enough that got me confident in terms of how names reacted today? No, not really. So, here's what I did. I try to follow the plan. For instance, last week, I was a bit more upbeat because we saw a lot of growth names, right, that were acting very well, right? The IBD 50 was, basically trending higher for most of the week last week. It was down about 2.6% today, and it's nice that it held the 20-day moving average. But again, it just didn't feel like there was a lot of things that I wanted to jump into today. All right, so I personally need a little bit more confirmation than that. It's again, I think for me very positive that we held on to, or we're right around this virgin point of control. I would want to see us stay above this and then get back into value. So that'll be in the next that'll be in the next couple days to watch. Then we'll just kind of have to see how that Fed meeting takes shape. All right, so I always show the trade blotter. If you're new to watching these videos, or if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, if you're a member of Tribeca Trade Group, of course, I show all trades real time, and we give a video and we go through open positions in the middle of the day. But if you're not, and if you're new to watching these videos, I show exactly what I do on a day-to-day basis. I show the trade blotter of what I do, and I added to a couple starters in the beginning of the day. NVIDIA is always one of my dip plays, right? I always kind of gravitate to what I view as quality, right? When we have, I don't go too far out on a limb. Oh, also other things that saw option activity were the airlines, right? The Jets ETF acted very well. LUV, which we mentioned last week, saw a big, decent sized call buyer last week. That name acted very well today. But again, I view the airlines as difficult, right? That's not my go-to when we're moving, when we've got a lot of volatility. I'm not looking at the airlines for the day. So again, everybody's different. That's me. You may be completely different, and that's fine. There's many ways to make money in this market. So you don't have to listen to what I do, but everybody has a particular style. And when there's big dip days, the airlines is not my go-to trade. Something like this did hold the 50-day moving average. It did break this range, which I thought it had a possibility to break and go up and to the right around the 20-day moving average. That didn't happen. We'll see if we kind of get some backing and filling here on the top of value. That level to watch is what, 209.81? 209.81. So I tried that trade. I actually added to it. It was going to be a day trade. I decided to make it into like just a short-term swing. I added right there 15 minutes to go in the day at the end of the day. And then a lot of other positions, I just took the stop, right? I mean, every swing trade that I get involved in, and it's kind of difficult on days like this because you have a gap down and sometimes the price is already through your stop. And, I have a tendency to kind of give some of my positions the benefit of the doubt to come back. And I basically did that up until we got to about 11:30, and if we look at the S&P chart or the Qs chart, whatever you want to look at here, but if you look at the 5-minute, I gave it some time here, and then once we kind of took this level out at 11:30 and breath began to get worse, then I started to make some difficult decisions. And that's really tough, right? It's not easy it's not easy and it's not fun to take off positions, around the low of the day at that point. Now, we did go lower and we finished very close to that level. So, I think I did the right thing. I mentioned that I obviously took off some swing trades towards the end of last week, being a little bit more conservative and increasing my cash balance. But you're going to see here, I took off, APO, which the private equity names got hit pretty hard on, anybody thinking that they have real estate exposure. So again, I think a lot of moves that weren't really sensible today, but that's just my opinion. And I'm still going to respect the stop price, right? And just got out of a few other things that didn't hit my stop price. This was one that I had added in the beginning of last week, hit a target or two, and then took the remainder of the trade off for small profits. And you could see about 3 or 4 positions like that today. Just decided to say, you know what, let's err on the side of to be conservative, and anything that did hit a stop price target was one that I added towards the end of last week. I mentioned in the weekend video too that if target was to break the range, that actually, it's still, I think I'm fine doing that. I was looking for this thing to turn the corner and head back higher. It may eventually do that, but not at this time. So again, that's just what I tend to do. My thought process on days like this, because I've traded through a lot of nasty days before, and I've learned to just realize that you may have a down day on a day like this, and set yourself up so that you could succeed going forward. Because we don't really know if we're going to get more of a string of volatility, even though we've already had a decent move to the downside. It doesn't mean that we have to stop here. So I like to just say, hey, I'll make some tough decisions. Right? I don't let my ego get in the way. And I know it's kind of tough because there's a lot of traders following some of my, following what I do. But I would rather just say, hey, I'm going to have a bad day. I'm very confident in my system. So, I have ample time to say, oh, you have a bad day, and you just kind of rebuild. And I also I mention this term a lot when we have some volatility. I like to be playing offense, not defense, when there's volatility. Today, I felt like in the middle of the day, I had to play a little defense. I was pushed back in in my own red zone. So that happens from time to time, and you got to do what you got to do to get back on the right side of the ball. So that's kind of how my day was. You could see I did decide once we took out this Q's or this virgin point of control. I did put on an end of day trade right at 3 o'clock, and then took the majority of that trade on. I actually rolled it a little bit to the October monthly contract. Yeah, so this was fine. This ended on a positive note. Google was something else that I just tried a weekly call spread on. I thought Google had come in enough, or was down enough. And it's a quality name into that 50-day moving average. So we'll see if it can get back above value. I did take a quick target in that one too. Other names that I thought were interesting for the day, there wasn't a lot, to be honest. There's just, Asan, which is amazing that it finished green for the day. But it's also not in any of the major indices, right? The more a name is in, so this is a good question. Somebody asked about, like, how the hell is this name up? Well, many names are in indices, and if those indices are being sold, right, or if the ETFs are being sold, or S&P futures are being sold, right, or being shorted, right, all of those bigger names are going to get pushed around based on what's happening with in the ETF or with S&P futures. So it's sometimes I know that everybody, like, when they own a name, they want to see a name go into an index, but really you kind of, if you're holding a name besides, specifically for that event, you actually, like, it's nicer when a name is not in the major indices or not in any major sector ETFs, because then it can kind of do what it wants to naturally do. It doesn't get pushed around by being in an ETF. So that's it for today's video. Kind of short. I feel like I need more time to see some other setups. I didn't see a ton of things that I wanted to jump into for the day. So again, sometimes that's just the way things unfold. So I think we'll have an interesting week. I toned down and just added more to my cash balance, even though I kind of put some index exposure on there towards the end of the day. And we'll see how things line up. But if you're kind of seeing the same thing, or if you're not that enthused by the end of day move, I wouldn't worry about it. Don't be in a rush, right? Let some of the setups materialize. And like I said, I was much more interested in some of the things that I was seeing last week. So this week, it just may need another day to build a little bit. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys fared well with the volatility. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.